Hello, encouragers. I'm Rebecca Scott, wife, mother of 4, author, and owner and designer of Rebecca Scott Designs. I'm here to encourage you, to make you feel the I can do this spirit each and every day of our awesome journeys to fulfill those many important roles. I believe we are fully equipped to execute, and I will provide you with as much knowledge and practices and systems as I can to help you understand just what I know you can do. Execute. We got this.
Encouragers, I have got a podcast that's been floating around in my head for quite some time, and I keep getting asked this whether I'm coaching or literally standing in my booth with the persons. And the ultimate question is, should I hire a graphic designer? So it's frequently when you guys come to me or even remark on our Facebook community at The Encourager, you'll say, gosh, I don't know if I can afford it. I don't know if I really need it. I hear there's this new Canva that's pretty user-friendly. And I'm laughing because it's like, I can't express to you enough how much the answer is yes. And so I went to work and I thought, well, if we're going to have an expert, and remember you guys, an expert means someone who's done something for 10,000 hours. You know, sometimes you think of an expert, you're like, well, I have to have a certificate or I have to have graduated. No. If you've done 10,000 hours of something, you're an expert. And this gal, she's actually very qualified as well, but she's definitely an expert in graphic design. So I'm going to welcome Melissa Heckel to the podcast today.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for coming on. You are the perfect one to usher us into why this world is so important, especially when you're just starting your business. It's probably the first thing outside of my accountant that I was like, I'm going to need some help with the visuals. So Melissa has wrote on an awesome outline, and we will provide this as a resource on The Encourager with her permission so that you guys can reference this and how to get a hold of her to help you with what we're going to talk about today. So, Melissa, tell us again, where you are at and family and a little bit about your business.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. My business is called Branch Creative Co. I started it freelancing on the side about 10 years ago. Then when we had our first daughter, I decided to go part-time in the office and grow my business part-time. And then eventually, when we had our second daughter, over 7 years ago, which is crazy, was when I was able to go out on my own and do my own thing. And so now I work out of my home studio based here in Brandon, South Dakota, and I have a small team of contracted designers. And also I just recently hired a business development director to help me bring on new clients and help me write my own blog posts and email marketing and social media and all that fun stuff.
I love it. I love that it's so full-bodied. So you guys, you heard multiple terms in there. You heard business developer, you heard contractors. So clearly she knows how to run a business successfully and why it's so important that we need a graphic designer. So Melissa, what does great design do for our businesses?
Well, first of all, it can definitely help you attract your ideal customers. It captures their attention and it allows you to showcase your business in the best possible light. One of the things with really good design is it also gives you credibility. If they see design that is, maybe from scratch or homemade, I like to say, you might lose some credibility in your business because they might think that you don't take yourself seriously. And then you can miss out on or gain customers based on your design alone.
Yes, and I think you had a note here, too, that I think is really important. Like you said, if it's homegrown, they will know within 3 seconds or less is how long you have for your first impression with a client. 3 seconds. So, I just think that's, really important. Just note that the first impression is with 3 seconds. And we all know that when we're scrolling Facebook, if this is a legit business or if they're a startup. And either one is good, but you'll know it by their design. And also, I love this phrase is that business owners wear a lot of hats, but not all hats are a good fit. And so this is one of those hats, you guys, that's probably not a good fit for you because you have an amazing hat that you're wearing and you're rocking. Don't wear the one that doesn't fit.
Right, exactly.
Yes, that's such a good one because I do love hats, but I like to hand them out as well. So if we are just starting out and we're thinking, okay, I'm convinced, the first 3 seconds convinced me, I need to get a graphic designer, what do we do?
Okay, so first, it'd be really important to give yourself a strong foundation in brand strategy. Now, brand strategy encompasses so much more than just your logo. A lot of people, when they start a business, think first thing I need is a logo. But it's really important to build that foundation to Flush out your why, really establish your vision for your company, figure out who your ideal customer is and how you're going to speak to them, and how you're going to serve them. And then once you get those core things established, then move into your visuals. It'll be so much easier to create your logo because you're going to be so strong in your foundation with your brand strategy, that your logo will just fall into place and it'll make so much more sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we are going to have a part 2 here, everybody, about brand strategy because it deserves its own little podcast or big podcast. So stay tuned for that as well. Okay. So let's say we found somebody, we figured out our why, we know our vision, and we even know our ideal customer, and we know what they're eating and what they're wearing and where they're shopping. We know all of that. What is the first thing that we should do after that? Like we've established what we're going to do.
Right. So once your logo is established, and you have all your visuals in place, the next thing to do would be to build out your website. It'll not only look professional, but it gives you a chance to show up, in search results if your website's optimized for search engines like Google. And it's important to do this so well, and not piecemeal it, because a lot of customers are going to be scoping you out before they ever interact with you, before they ever step foot in your store. And that just goes right back to that immediate first impression. Like they're going to go to your website and they're going to immediately start gathering opinions about you and your product and your services based on their experience on your website.
And so when you say piece it out, Melissa, you're saying once you have decided, who your customer is and your why and your vision, you need to be particular on who your graphic designer is because you're going to have them do multiple things within your business, right? So it's not like you want your website to look different than your email campaign, to look different from your social media post, correct?
Right. So you want a really consistent, cohesive look, but then also, and maybe piece it out isn't the right word, but maybe like DIY, just throw something up there that's hard to use or isn't visually appealing or representing your company in the best light.
Goes back to that 3 seconds. Tell me a little bit more, if you can give me an example with all of your clients, Melissa, that potential customers will be interacting with your site most likely before they ever reach out or interact with you. And this is especially true nowadays with social media, like before they tune into your live event, before they go to your actual storefront, if you have a storefront, they're going to see like what you're all about. So how do we make sure that it still represents what we are in all the fields? Can you give us an example from one of your customers that you were like, you helped them make sure it was a little bit more cohesive because one was not matching up to the other, where they did piece it out and try to do it themselves?
Right. So I've had a customer who, a local CPA, for example, and their website had their old logo on it still. It had pictures of their old building. It didn't have all of their current services or their current staff members listed. And so it was just really important. They hired us to go in and completely, basically start from the ground up and make sure that all of their copy spoke to their ideal client. It covered all of their services. All the information was accurate. The look and feel matched who they were visually. And then also just reorganize the website so that it flowed better. And, the drop downs in the menu were all categorized and made more sense so that it was just an easier user experience or more smooth user experience for the people visiting their website.
Now, does a graphic designer, so I'm thinking, gosh, if I was a small business owner, I might think, well, I need to hire a website person. So is that true, or do graphic designers still have some of those skill sets because of the natural flow of graphics, how they should work? So they usually have a website background as well?
They can, but not always.
Okay.
I spent several years working for a local digital agency and web design company. And then I also took web design in college. So I have a little bit of a background. I would say talk to your designer that you're potentially working with and see what their experience is. Otherwise, for more complex sites, I've also teamed up with web developers who can build something from scratch, highly customizable. And then I can work with them directly to make sure they have the right fonts, the right logos, and I can kind of oversee the build out of the website just to kind of make sure, as a creative director, that it's in line with their brand and their vision for their company.
So when you are starting out and you're getting this graphic design, like you said, ask them, do you have some website experience? But it's not an end-all if they don't, because then they can work directly with who you find for the website part of it as well.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. Okay, so then you say you've got your graphic designer, and you're going to build out your website to match what the graphic designer is awesomely setting up for you based on your vision. Then the third thing is social media.
Yeah, so I kind of categorize this as the last piece to hire out in terms of design, mostly because on social media, people really want to get to know you. They want to know the person behind the business. So you can really start simple here. It doesn't mean you have to post 3 times a day. Maybe look at your schedule and see what you can do that will allow you to stay consistent. If that's only a couple posts a week, then that's a great place to start. And just really be you, give a snapshot of what you're working on and what you're doing behind the scenes, any completed projects. Sprinkle in those little tidbits so they get to know the person behind the business instead of always just like, buy my stuff, promoting yourself.
Yes.
It gives your followers just a little something extra and another reason to follow you. But I think that would probably be like the third one to hire out, in terms of, a design role within your company.
So if we have found the designer that we are like really psyched about, we've taken the step, we are going to hire them, and let's say this one can do graphic design and a little bit of our website. We haven't dived into social media just yet, but we're possibly thinking about it. What other ways can designers work within our businesses in the different capacities?
So it really depends on where you're at in your business and your budget. There are a lot of different ways in which you can work with a designer. You can start right out the gate. You can hire them part-time or full-time as an employee on your team, depending on how much work you have for them as well. You could hire them on a monthly retainer basis, and this way you can have an exact budget each month for how much you plan to spend on your graphic design for your company. Or you could hire on a project-by-project basis. If you find someone you really enjoy working with, you can just reach out as projects come up, and designers can give you a quote for each individual project as you go along.
Is it common that I'm seeing a theme here, other than the part-time or full-time? It usually is per project, not per hour, correct?
Yeah, it really depends on the designer and how they set up their pricing structure. Some will quote things by projects. Others, for myself and my clients, some of my long-term clients that I have like over 10 years of a relationship with, we just have that trust. So I'm not quoting things every single time they send me something, and it's more on an hourly basis. But other projects that come in, I will quote them if it's a larger project than I do on a project basis. It just really depends.
So now we know a little bit more about the payment structure. Tell us, and please do not take offense to this, but I know that you will tell me how it is. It used to be that graphic designers were a dime a dozen. Like they were like, oh, I got my degree in graphic design. So how do we narrow down which graphic designer, or even how to find one before we find before we post like I need a graphic designer and we get 12 posts that say, oh, I did that. Like, can you help us find one?
Yeah. Start with who you know. Ask your trusted business friends or colleagues. You could post in your local business Facebook groups. You kind of risk getting a lot of people reaching out with that who may not be qualified. However, there are some, I know myself and some of my own fellow graphic designers are part of those groups, and we're watching those posts to see if any projects come along that we think are a good fit. So that might not be a bad place to look. You could do a Google search for, graphic designers in your area. But when you do find somebody, I just suggest, definitely review their portfolio. Majority of graphic designers have websites that you can go and poke around on and review the style of their brand, of their own company, and then also look at their portfolio and make sure that their design style matches kind of what you're thinking. It helps to read any client reviews that they have either on their website or Google or Facebook pages.
Here's a question for me, because I design for a living as well, but I work with textiles and fabrics. So when I'm looking for one, do I look for what their website looks like, so then I'm like, I like that? Or do I want to work with a graphic designer that listens to my brand strategy, like we've talked about, and why I started it, and they're willing to mold to what I've already established? I'm kind of wondering, like, what comes first? Do we have the graphic designer spell out for us, like, this is what I think you should do, or do we come to them with, this is what I like, and then they develop it from there?
I think it can be a little bit of a give and take. I think once you find a designer that you are interested in working with, it helps to reach out and have a conversation with them and find out, ask them about their process and how they communicate their turnaround times, process for what it'll be like working with them and when you can expect to hear from them. But then also ask them the questions that you just brought up. Like if I have something already established, get their expert opinion on what they think you should do. I think it's really important to listen to the designer because they are the expert. One example that I always see in my, design groups or my mastermind is that like you wouldn't go to a doctor and tell them what your diagnosis is and what you think your treatment should be. You should go to the expert with your concerns and let them guide you and coach you on what the next step should be. Or what direction you should take with in this case, with your designs.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. And honestly, in my experience, I got to work with Melissa with RSD. The part that was comforting is she was always going, okay, I would say I've got a new idea, I need some graphics, and she would want to know, who are we aiming at this time? What are you feeling? Do you want more florals? Do you want more graphics? Has anything changed with what you're liking? And so that to me was just always very comforting. Like she was concerned about what I wanted, but then could also like knock my socks off with her developing it. So I had an idea, and then the graphic designer, in my case, Melissa, would develop it more and say, this is great. I've been learning this, so I'd like to apply this. Is that okay with you? So I think it's important when you're working with a graphic designer, yes, they are the expert, but they should also pay really close attention to what your goals are. And, if it's a growth year that you're choosing or a re-strategizing year, you're like, I'm over whatever it is, they'll be attuned to that and offer all the new things that they too are gaining in their industry.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you kind of spoiled me for sure with what graphic designers should behave like. Okay, so I see on here that we don't necessarily have to start from scratch when we're hiring this graphic designer. And I think this is something you do in your own business, and it's called a design day. Can you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, this is kind of a new trend that I'm seeing popping up in the design industry, and it's really awesome. So I had a client local here who had a boutique, and she had a really nice logo, just built a brand new brick and mortar, and the sign had her logo in it, obviously, and we didn't want to start from scratch and have to, do a new sign. Those are so expensive. So what we decided to do was give her a brand refresh, and she had a whole checklist of items. This works really well if you've got a really full, like sticky Post-it note sitting on your desk of things that you just want to get done in terms of design or marketing. So we just we met and talked about what her vision was and all the items that she needed. And it was just the perfect fit for what we call a design day. And she booked me for an entire day from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we made sure it was a day where she could be available so I could text her, call her, email her at any time with updates as I was going through my creative process. And in the end, we came out with a really refined color palette, a set of email graphics, some social media templates that she could plug into Canva. And so while she isn't at a point in her business where she can hire a full-time designer, she still, at the boutique, needs that graphic design. And so she was able to take all these elements, and she can do this on her own and present a really polished, really professional look to her customers. So it was just a really great fit and a really great option for someone who just needed to crank out a lot of designs all in one setting.
It's so true. And I think this is a really affordable way to, and I love the visual that you gave of the sticky note, because it is like that. It's like, gosh, I do not like how my emails are looking and that my social media posts are starting to look the same or they look blah. I think it's a great idea to just hire this design day and then just be like, I need this and this and this and this. And so that it also gives the power back to you to continue, like in her case, using the Canva, like, okay, I can use the templates that she set up and all of that. I just think, man, that is a really affordable way, an accelerated way to keep moving your business forward. I love that. Like, especially if you're in a place where you can't put a graphic designer on a retainer every month. That is just a fantastic trend. I love that.
Yeah, and what's really cool about it, and busy business owners will appreciate this, is that during those 6 hours while I was creating all these graphics, she was working on her business, setting goals and vision planning and doing other things to move her business forward. So it was just a really awesome day for her and for me.
Yeah, concentration. Oh, I love it. Like a huge think tank for 6 hours? Yes, please. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say our budget is even more limited than that. Let's say we can't do the design day yet. What can we do? Or what would you suggest we start with?
As you know, Becca, I am a lover of lists. So I would list out everything that you know you need help with. Obviously, there's going to be things that maybe you don't realize you need, but make a list of everything that you know you need help with, and then prioritize the products or the projects that you think will have the biggest impact on your business or the biggest return on investment. Maybe baby steps is the way to go, and it doesn't all have to be done at once. I know I've put together a lot of proposals for clients where we split things out into, here's phase 1 that we're going to do now, and here's phase 2 that we're going to do in 6 to 12 months. Another option is to just request a quote. And it depends on the designer and how they structure their business and their pricing. But sometimes I'll also put together like 3 different packages. Like, here's a good package, here's a better package, and then here's a best package. And it just depends on, what your budget or time allows for. You could also, another option is to just hire a designer to create templates for you, kind of like for that design day. But maybe it's just a great way to get your Canva looking really good and having some templates that you can use so that at least you have a foundation or a starting point for creating, really good graphics.
Mm-hmm. And again, that goes back down to that 3 seconds, you guys. In 3 seconds, as they're scrolling, a sea of 50 other posts, what is there going to be their impression of your business? So it's worth it to spend, like she said, just making the list and just do the phase 1 with this person. And what I also like about you saying it could be a phase 1 or phase 2 if this is what the graphic designer offers is that it's very team oriented. And I'm, of course, big on teams that they want to see you win, because when you win, they win. Like they're not just pumping out design and like, at least, and maybe it's because I got to work with you, Melissa, it's that they want to see your team grow. They want to help meet the goals with you. So they serve as like a branch, similar to your name. They serve as a branch to your team. They want to see you succeed. And so they will offer phases as like, man, I totally understand. I see where you are at this point of your business. This is what you can afford. This could be possible in 6 to 12 months. So how clear and concise and beautiful is that? So that they are like, no, you're going to grow. You're naturally going to grow. So they put that energy into your business. Geez, that's a win-win. I love that idea. So if I were you, encouragers, and you're really thinking that, okay, it's time for me to do some form of graphic designer, whether they're on a retainer or we're talking about this list, listen for when they use the word growth, when they're encouraging, like, well, what are your goals? When they're asking about your growth, when they're asking about your team, when they're asking about your experiences, those are all beautiful, not red flags. So whatever the opposite of that would be, those are all fireworks for somebody that you want working with you, because they are wanting to be a part of your vision for your company. And I think you should look for them saying, here's phase 1 or phase 2 or whatever their phrasing would be, like, I would do this and this and then this, because that means they see potential in you as well and are willing to help you see your growth happen. I love the idea of the phase 1, phase 2. That's great. And then I love that we can wrap this up with also reminding everybody, because you know how I talk a lot about your super skill, everybody. And sometimes when we receive our super skill, we're like, but it just seems so like maybe it's unsexy. You're like, mine is mass producing, you guys. It's not that sexy. But darn if it isn't my skill set. So what is your time worth? If you could do your super skill at 90% of your time during a week, is it worth hiring out the hats that don't fit? It is totally worth it. And we just talked about, you can do different versions of it as well. You can start with a phase 1, or you can start with a list and a baby step even. We even got to use the word baby step. Just start with a baby step. It'll be worth your time every single time. And it's the one position I probably put off the longest, and I wish it would have been the second position after my accountant that I hired, because it just ends up being an amazing presence to people. And it's interesting, and Melissa, I'm sure you've seen this with your clients, where they're like, gosh, I just started getting so many more likes and my social media started growing, where they think it's all about their business card and their graphics and the cute little cards they get to put in things. And they're like, but my social media is increasing. Why is that? Because visually you look so much better.
Yes, for sure.
And that's just it. That'll be a huge impact on so many different levels when you can look beautiful, not just in the package that you send them, but also your presence online, and it all look like one team effort. It just makes a huge difference. If you would like to see more and read more from Melissa and her company and what they do, and kind of get some tips, some design tips and some marketing tips, I am on her email list. I love to get it. It's like my hot tea moment where I'm like, oh, because they're not quick. So I get to read them and read the paragraphs and find out, am I matching up with what the graphic design world is doing now and all the different things that can be offered to me. So I'd love to read her emails. You can sign up. They're just 2 times a month for marketing and design tips for business owners at branchcreativeco.com/email. And I highly recommend this. You guys, if you're at baby step number 1, this is baby step number 1. Sign up for her email so you can find out what is available to you and what the latest is in the world. Then you want to hear it from Melissa as an expert of graphic design and branding. How would you like to encourage our listeners as we close this podcast?
I would just say, I just like to encourage them in knowing that they have options, that you don't have to think that it's always going to be expensive or not worth hiring, to look into options, and that it will impact their business in a way that they can up-level and attract the best customers and build a business that they love.
I love it. Yes, it is possible. Until next time, encouragers, we got this.
Thank you, encouragers, for all your ratings and reviews. They really make the largest difference and keep encouraging me to keep learning more and bringing on amazing guests for you. This review comes from A. Matsky. This is a great podcast. It is marketed to entrepreneurs and small business owners, but I find so many helpful tips for me to use at work and home life so I have a better balance in life. She has fabulous guests and is fun to listen to. I generally walk away with a great tips and knowledge. Thank you, A. Matsky. That's the truth. I mean, I obviously work with business owners, but I love to encourage anybody. We all are handling multiple roles in life, and I've definitely had some successes and I've had some failures that I love to share about so that I can keep encouraging you. Thank you so much for your ratings and reviews. I know how you can start executing on all the things that God has equipped you to do. You can pick up my book at theencouragerpodcast.com and check out the store complete with book, journal, and the master course. Also, make sure to check out the resources tab where you'll get a hold of all the PDFs from the podcast. Thank you for tuning in, encouragers. Remember to subscribe so it's automatically on your phone. And please rate and review me. We got this, encouragers.